I've always loved older people. Ever since I was a little girl, I had the most incredible grandparents who I just adored and would spend hours with, listening to their wonderful stories, just learning from them, really, because we have so much to learn from our elders, don't we? I went on to become an occupational therapist, and I loved my work in the NHS for many years, and I specialised in neurorehabilitation, and I always particularly loved it when my patients were older, and they often were. I'm married to Steve, who sadly, he sends his apologies because he was really hoping to be on this session as well, but he's going to be joining us this evening. Yeah, so I'm married to Steve. We've got 2 grown-up children, Belle, who's 23, Toby, who's 19. We're all dotty about animals. We've got 2 dogs, 2 cats. We've just adopted a little rescue kitten, actually, who's very sweet, and they're firmly shut in the next door room because I didn't want them to disturb us. Yeah, so my role at church developed over a couple of years and was prompted really by, I attended a CPAS, a Church Pastoral Aid Society. I don't know if you've heard of that, Growing Leaders course. And I will never forget being asked one quick question in particular. And this was, and it might be a question that you would like to ask yourselves actually, if you could be doing anything for the Lord in the next 5 years with sort of no bars, it could happen. If, what would this be? And I knew immediately and wrote down, well, I'd love to be involved in setting up a group for older people at church, somewhere safe and welcoming where loneliness and isolation could be reduced. More importantly, somewhere where people could be given the opportunity to hear the gospel and discover more about Jesus. So we were encouraged to go away and pray. And this I did. I prayed and I prayed for a couple of years, actually, because my children were young and I was doing other things. And at this point, I might come back to this a few times, but I would just love to encourage you to pray. I'm sure you already do. I'm sure you do. But if you have a sort of a prayer or a little inkling about where God might be leading you, I just love to encourage you really to pray. So it wasn't until our vicar at the time approached me, as I say, it was probably about 18 months later. And he said, I know you've got a real heart for older people. Have you got any thoughts about what we could be doing as a church? We don't do that much, do we really? And I was just so excited. It was just amazing. I said, yes, I've got loads of thoughts and ideas. And yeah, it was just so lovely that he had that sense too. And I'm sure that was because of the prayer actually as well. So a long story short, and after a lot more prayer, countless conversations, building a team, and I have an amazing team, we set up Connections, our weekly group for seniors in church. And Connections, as you can probably see from that photo, lots of little tables, coffee, homemade cake, activity tables. There's always a thought for the day. It's very gentle. It's extremely welcoming, and it is saturated in prayer. So Connections, as Adam has said, is one of the largest church-based groups in the UK, and it runs weekly. And I think that's quite important actually for continuity. It focuses on welcome, listening to people, coming alongside them, building trust. And often I'm asked about what sort of evangelistic model do you use? And I would always say it's a relational model. Our guests know that they are known and loved. And there's a huge emphasis on love and care. It's highly replicable, and it's a really great way of connecting with seniors. And I know many of you on this screen do similar things in your church settings as well with your local older friends. Just so that you're aware, we also run what we call pop-up connections in local care homes. And that's where a small team of us go in, bringing cakes and love and care, really. Because we're so aware that for many of these residents, they're not able to get out to church or our group Connections. So we go to them. And I sometimes think, well, I know this is what Jesus would do, isn't it? He would go to those who were housebound or those that were unable to get out to the temple. And so that's what we do as well. I've always prayed that we would be able to bring our older friends on in their faith, not just provide a lovely setting, although that's actually really, really important in terms of valuing and appreciating them. And I knew we needed to be more intentional in sharing the gospel with our older friends. So again, much more prayer. We tried different evangelistic courses, but in my experience, none of them seemed to just quite hit the spot or work. And people would say things like, "Oh, Pippa, no, I wouldn't be able to keep up with the course. I don't need to go. I've been to Sunday school. What if there's a test at the end?" And I'd say, I promise there's no test at the end. But I think there was this sort of worry about the word course. So anyway, we'd get a small handful of people who would attend these courses, but I just sensed that there was more. That there might be something else out there. So I prayed more. And at this point, I remember I was up in Scotland. I went to the Isle of Lewis in the Hebrides. I don't know if many of you know, I'm sure you probably do, but there was an amazing revival in 1949 to 1952. It's known as the Hebrides Revival. And this was where scripture, so Bible verses that people who had been children in those times had learned scripture and Bible verses. During this time of revival, it was almost as if the Holy Spirit was shining a spotlight on what these Bible verses meant. And people were just finding themselves weeping and just coming to know God in the most extraordinary way. And I remember when I was up there a couple of years ago, I met these two amazing older ladies who could remember back to that time. They were children actually in those times, and they were telling me all about this. And I remember thinking, wouldn't it be amazing if the same thing could happen with hymns? Because so many of our wonderful, favorite hymns, or all hymns really, are pretty much based on scripture and biblical truths, of course. I must add here also just that this revival in the Hebrides was, funnily enough, saturated in prayer. And I just got so excited when I realized and I read that this originally started, they believe, with two older ladies in their 80s in very poor health. They were housebound. One was blind, the other almost bent double with arthritis. They pleaded and prayed for revival night and day from their little cottage. Isn't that just amazing? And look what God did. So we need to pray. I found that such an encouragement. Anyway, after more prayer, this idea of using traditional hymns as a sort of welcoming and non-threatening way to explain Christian truths about the Christian faith in a gentle and very accessible way, it kind of developed further. And hymns, of course, are known to and enjoyed by this generation particularly. They resonate with a lifetime of memories. And it's just amazing because even those suffering from increasing memory loss and dementia will often remember the lyrics and melodies, as music recognition is one of the last things to go as memory fades. It's just been amazing for us to see people who have even lost the ability to speak, but they can still sing these wonderful hymns that are they're lodged way back in their long-term memory. So anyway, at first, we just did a few sort of one-off sessions telling the story about a well-known hymn and the history, and that's where Steve came in, my husband. So Steve wrote the talks, and we just found that these needed to be a bit more structured and intentional in the way we did this. We really wanted to bring people on in their faith. So Steve, basically, I asked him if he would develop a short series that could sit as a full kind of introduction, if you like, to the Christian faith. And so Hymns We Love, as we know it today, was born then. And we ran that first series in the lead up, I think it was to Christmas 2019. And it was an amazing success. We had on average, we were getting 70 people attending, whereas before a course, it was like 4 or 5 people would come. It was, I don't know, I just think the bar's quite low. Oh, come along and sing a lovely hymn and learn about the history. It's quite easy to invite somebody to something like that, isn't it? And I remember we had a church service with over 200 people that attended following that, the first Hymns We Love series that we ran. And it's just been amazing to see so many lives changed through this series, as you know, as people have encountered our amazing God, for whether it's the first time or, you know, whether it's rekindling a sort of long dormant relationship maybe that they had way back. So we knew that with God's help, we'd sort of stumbled on something really special, really powerful, and we wanted to seek his guidance on where he was leading with this. And so as we entered 2020, that infamous year, two things happened. Firstly, we committed to praying, really praying for the Lord to lead, but also news began to come through, of course, of this new virus that was kind of spreading rapidly in China. And both those things really shaped what happened next. So, and it was after Christmas, it was January 2020. I just sensed that I needed to go away and spend a few days by myself to really pray about how Hymns We Love should look, how more and more older people should be given the opportunity to hear the good news of Jesus. So I spent 4 days in a friend's cottage and started to pray. But each time I prayed, I'd sit down, get my Bible out, or and start praying. I would find myself crying, and it was just extraordinary. And I remember ringing my mum and saying, "I just don't know what's going on. Each time I try to pray, all I can do is cry." And I remember she said to me, "Oh, darling, just go with it." So I did. I basically prayed and I cried for 4 days. Sorry, because it catches me every time. Because anyway, the dream and the prayer just seemed to grow and grow. And I wrote down this prayer that I sensed God was calling me to pray. And this prayer, as I say, was, and it still is, it's quite a big prayer. It sounded a bit preposterous really to me when I was reading, and I was almost embarrassed to go back home and tell people about it. But this is the prayer. And it was for hundreds of thousands of older people to be given the opportunity to hear the gospel and to discover how amazing our wonderful God is and how much he loves them. So I continued praying, and of course was unaware that the pandemic was just about to hit just 2 months later. And obviously so much has happened during the pandemic, and I know all of you, we certainly were, I don't think we've ever been so busy caring and looking after our older friends in such different ways, you know, having to go to them rather than expecting them because they were having to shield at home. Anyway, a long story short, our first ever Zoom call was with Lambeth Palace. I remember being terrified because I'm not very technical, didn't know what I was doing. Anyway, they wanted to know what we were doing with our seniors because obviously vicars were ringing and messaging them saying, well, what do we do? They're all shielding. Anyway, 5 weeks of daily Zoom calls, getting Faith in Later live. Oh my goodness, it's just been amazing and such a joy. We launched the Daily Hope on the 26th of April, 2020. And it's been a lifeline to so many people. I don't have the exact numbers to date, but I know it's way over 10 million minutes now of call time that have been used, and that's way over 800,000 calls. As I say, that's a bit out of date. Do you know, even yesterday I had a message from this dear lady who I have met since, but I didn't know her before. She lives in London. She still rings the Daily Hope. It is her lifeline. She said to me, Pippa, I could not survive without it. I can't get out. It brings me to the Lord. It's just been amazing. I don't know if we can have the Daily Hope slide, Adson, please. There we go. Perfect. I'm sure you possibly know this, but it's free to all landlines and mobile phones. It's available 24 hours a day, and I think that's very significant. 7 days a week. It's never not available. And I'd just love to encourage you, please do share this number with anyone that you know who possibly is housebound or just finding it hard to get out, who aren't connected to the internet. It's amazing. So, and please do continue to pray for Faith in Later Life as they've taken this on solely, well, with us supporting, of course, but, it would be wonderful if you could keep praying for it. As I said, we're still finding it so needed. People are still lonely and isolated, of course. And, as we know, people are housebound for a whole variety of reasons, whether that's ill health or immobility or bereavement or just feeling very anxious and low in confidence. That's something I find a lot with our older ones. And Hymns We Love has always been at the cornerstone of Daily Hope. It's on option 1, and you can hear all the talks by Steve on this option. And the Daily Hope, of course, has been really fantastic to help raise the profile of Hymns We Love. Many other wonderful things have obviously happened since the pandemic, and setting up the Daily Hope, which we can see, God has just been so amazing and so incredible. And the Good Book Company, you may well have heard of the Christian publishing company, they really caught the vision for Hymns We Love, realizing too that there isn't that much out there in terms of a bespoke evangelistic series for seniors, because Hymns We Love has been written with older eyes and ears completely in mind. It really, really has been. And we always knew that we would like Hymns We Love to be available for people in different ways. So to be used as videos as well as written scripts. And we enlisted the help of a really great media company called Fruit Media to help us with this. And the first series, again, not course, series, is, has been launched, which I'll tell you about in a moment. And we've got 2 more series ready to go, actually. We haven't got around to doing that yet. Anyway, what is Hymns We Love? As I've said, it's an evangelistic series designed to introduce seniors to the good news of the gospel. And each session explores a different aspect of the Christian faith through a familiar, well-loved hymn. And at the heart of each session is a 30-minute video, which brings together music, the hymn, testimony, a little interview, and prayer, along with a short talk, which tells the story, the history behind the hymn, and the Bible truths on which it's based. And week by week, the series aims to take guests on a faith journey from understanding who God is to making a personal commitment to him. So the content of each video follows the same pattern. So there's a welcome and an introduction. I then interview an older person who is sharing why this session's particular hymn is special to them. For example, why the Lord's my shepherd, what that means. The lovely lady Jean, for her, it was very special when she had cancer and she was in terrible pain in the middle of the night. She has always hummed the tune of the Lord's my shepherd, or sung it, and it's brought incredible comfort to her. So there's a little interview with at each of the sessions. The hymn is then sung by our Hymns We Love congregation, and then there's a talk by Steve reflecting on the story behind the hymn, the meaning of the words, and as I've said, the Bible truths to which they point. Then we sing the hymn again, encouraging guests and people just to really reflect on the words, and then I close in prayer. So yes, now we're up to date with slide 11. This series looks at these following hymns. So we've got How Great Thou Art, and we look at God being the powerful, holy creator of the universe who longs for relationship with us, his people. We then look at Rock of Ages, and we look at why Jesus had to die on the cross. Then it's Amazing Grace, that beautiful hymn, John Newton's hymn, and we look at God's extraordinary and lavish grace through John Newton's story, but also through the prodigal son's story as well. I think that's probably my favourite talk, actually, that one. Then we've got The Lord's My Shepherd, which is particularly pertinent, I think, for a lot of older ones. And we look at God being as our shepherd, journeying with us through the good and the harder times, particularly, relevant, as I said, as we get older. And then we've got the final one, which is that beautiful Charles Wesley hymn, And Can It Be? And here we look at how we can have confidence in our relationship with God, because this is based on what he's done and his incredible goodness, not on anything that we've done. And this session takes us to the point of praying a prayer of commitment to the Lord. And it's just beautiful. So then we've got also the next slide shows you we've got some introductory sessions. A little bit like kind of, with the Alpha course, you've got the Alpha Supper introductory sessions. Well, these ones are sort of a bit similar, I guess. There's Hark the Herald Angels Sing, which you could use at Christmas with mince pies and mulled wine or whatever. We're going to use that this year at church, actually. And then we've got Thine Be the Glory for Easter with hot cross buns, do whatever. And My Song is Love Unknown, which is more, it isn't time specific. You could use My Song is Love Unknown at any point in the year because it's relevant. And it's just all those three are lovely, gentle introductions, a great thing to invite people to initially. And then hopefully, if they enjoy it, which hopefully they would, they might be more inclined to come along to the next 5 sessions. And I think 5 doesn't sound too daunting. It's not like 13, is it? I think you might think, oh, I might come along. And there's a lot to say about how to run Hymns We Love sessions, looking at really important things like building a team around you. I've always known I couldn't possibly do any of what I do without my phenomenal team around me. But sometimes it's quite hard, isn't it, to get a team around you, and where do you begin? So there's a lot. There's a lot in the leaders kit that we've got about that, about getting the welcome and the environment right, hospitality, which is obviously different in different settings, and the essential need for prayer to cover every single aspect. And as I've said, all of this and much more is covered in 2 training videos that are all part of the leaders kit, which I'll show you that in a minute. But so that's all in there as well, and on the DVD and videos that you can download. So these video sessions are all set in a beautiful country church, and there are lovely shots of the countryside. It's kind of songs of praise vibes, if you know what I mean. But it's intentionally evangelistic. As I say, you don't have to use these videos. You might find that actually using the scripts might be better for your setting. We're not precious about the scripts. I'll say more about that in a moment, but this is an example, just that you get a sort of flavour of what you can expect. We're just going to show you now a very short promotional little video, which is again part of the leaders pack, which you'd get, and you could show this at your group if you already run one, or if you don't yet run one, maybe this might be a way in. There's another promotional video on the Good Book Company's website, which is more specifically for church leaders. So you might want to show that more to your vicar or your pastor or whoever. But this one, I think, is more of for participants. So we'll show you that now. Hopefully it'll work. Hello, I'm Pippa.
And I'm Steve.
We would love to invite you to join us for Hymns We Love, a short series where together we explore some of our most loved hymns.
Each time we meet, there'll be an opportunity to enjoy a beautiful rendition of a hymn, before a short talk where I explore the story behind its author and the meaning behind the words. And of course, we hope there'll be lots of time to chat too.
You don't need to know anything about music or the Bible to come along. There's no need to sing if you don't want to, but I suspect you might. It's very relaxed, and we would just love you to join us. It's our hope that as you enjoy these hymns and the stories behind them, you'll discover something new about our wonderful God who inspired them. We so look forward to you joining us as we explore the hymns we love. brilliant. Thank you, Adson, so much for sharing that. As I said, there's another promotional video on the Good Book Company's website, which is more tailored to leaders. Actually, one thing I haven't mentioned, which I should do, it doesn't have to be a leader, church vicar, leader running Hymns We Love. I think for any of us with a love and with a passion for reaching older people, this is yours. You know, everything is in there that you hopefully would need to think about is all in the leaders kit. And I'm really, really thrilled to tell you that it's launched in the UK. It launched on the 1st of June this year, and in the US and Australia, or Australasia actually, on the 1st of August. So we're so thrilled that we can tell you about it today. And I know I just showed you this is the leader's guide, but you've got a whole kit here with all sorts of different things inside it. There's invitations, the songbook for your guests to have so that they've got their book where they can scribble things down if they'd like to. There's the downloadable code for the DVDs, and there's videos rather, sorry. You can also order DVDs. I'm very aware, and I pushed for this because I don't know if you're like me, I'm not very techie, as I've already said, and I think for some people DVDs are quite useful to have. But if you'd like to order a copy, do go to the Good Book Company's website and just type in Hymns We Love, or go to Amazon. It's also on Amazon. And you can order the Leaders Kit. As I said, it's got everything that you need in it to get started. So I suppose that's really kind of, I'm drawing to the end, you'll be glad to hear. But I just wanted to say thank you so much for being with me and with us this afternoon. I just can't tell you how excited and thrilled I am to find ourselves where we are today. God is truly amazing. I sometimes have to pinch myself. And as I know you know, older people are the fastest growing age demographic in Western society. So for many of our seniors, there's a real need, isn't there, for community and connections. And in recent years, I think, we know seniors have become some of the most isolated in our communities. And I truly believe that we as individuals and churches have a wonderful opportunity right now to share God's love with this precious, sadly, so often overlooked and marginalized generation. So what's the time? Golly, yes, I'm finishing right now, but can I just mention the vision again for Hymns We Love? And that is for hundreds of thousands of older people to be given the opportunity to hear the gospel and to discover how amazing our wonderful God is and how much He loves them. And I just know that this will only happen as local churches and Christians pray and take up the call to really love and care for this very precious generation. And time may be short for a lot of our older friends too. So they need to hear the good news of Jesus, don't they?